In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the chain on your bicycle. This is something that you need to do as the chain starts to get stretched out. If you wait too long, you're going to stretch out the cassette and even the front chain rings, and then it's a much more expensive repair. The best way to determine when your chain needs to be replaced is to use a chain checker like this Park CC2. This tells you to replace the chain when it gets to 1 or less. I usually change mine when it gets up to about 0.75, maybe even a little bit less than that. That way I guarantee that I'm not stretching out my entire drivetrain. When you pick up your chain from the bike shop, you want to make sure you match the chain to your drivetrain. In other words, if you have a 10-speed cassette, make sure you get a 10-speed chain, 11-speed, and so forth. Other than a new chain, the only thing that you're really going to need to do this service is a chain breaker, such as this one. And I fabricated this little device out of a clothes hanger. You can do it out of an old spoke, and this will relieve tension when it's time to put the new chain back on, and I'll show you at what point we use this. The first thing that we want to do is remove the old chain, and you want to shift down into your smallest cog in the back. If you have a SRAM rear derailleur with the clutch, you want to lock the cage of the derailleur forward by pushing it forward with your hands and then locking it down with the button underneath. For a Shimano rear derailleur with a clutch, just move this lever forward and relieve the tension before you take off the chain. With the chain breaker, we're just going to break the old chain by removing one of the pins. And when you do this, you want to get it to where the pin does not come all the way out, just in case the drivetrain is too stretched out and you want to save this chain. So you want to move the pin out so that the chain will come apart without the pin coming all the way out. And sometimes it takes a little trial and error, and if you do it a couple times, you should get it to where that pin will stay in. There we go. So the pin is still sticking out. This way you can reinstall that chain if you need to. And now we're going to unthread the chain from the bike, and you want to make sure you move the part of the chain that does not have the pin sticking out through the rear derailleur. We're going to measure the new chain to be the exact same length of the old chain, unless of course you feel like you may need to add a link or subtract a link. What I do is hang the old and the new chain next to each other, and that way I can measure the length of the new chain. You can also lay the chain side by side on the ground. If you do that, make sure you lay it on a magazine or newspaper, because the new chain has a coating on it that will really attract dirt, and you do not want to get dirt in your new chain. Most new chains today will use a master link. Even the new Shimano chains coming out now have a master link. So you've got to keep that in mind. Chains will have a narrow and a wide link. The master link is a wide link. So what I'm going to do is find the point of the chain of the new one where I break it, so that I have two narrow links that will go together, and that way I can put in the master link. So in this chain, I'm going to break it right here. That way I have, again, two narrow links, and I'll put them together with the master link. So with my chain tool, again, I'm going to just push the pin out. And I sometimes will save the new links just in case I need them down the road if I break them. So it helps if you leave that pin sticking out, just like when we removed the old chain. That way you can reinstall this link onto the new chain if you have to later on down the road. To install the chain, we're going to lay it on the chain rings. But a few notes: a lot of chains today are one directional, and if they are, then you want to make sure the lettering is facing out as you install the chain. Shimano chains, especially the 10-speed and 11-speed chains, a lot of them are one directional. So we're going to lay the chain onto the chain ring, but keep in mind that a lot of chain rings today have narrow wide chain rings. One tooth on the chain ring is wide and one is narrow. So you want to make sure that you lay the wide portion of the chain onto the wide tooth, again, as you lay it onto the front chain ring. Now we're going to thread the chain over top of the cassette and then through the rear derailleur. So you want to make sure that you have the chain go on this side of the first jockey wheel of your derailleur, and then come around the back side of the bottom jockey wheel. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this little device that I fabricated with a coat hanger or an old spoke, just to kind of hold the chain together. Now, because this rear derailleur releases, it's very easy. I don't really necessarily have to have this, but if your bike does not have a newer SRAM rear derailleur that has that clutch, this tool is really valuable. So I'm actually even just going to take it off because it's easier to do it without it. But I just wanted to show it. So now I'm going to put the master link on. So one of the pin goes towards me and one goes away from me. It doesn't really matter which way. Now put the master link together, and then sometimes you can pull it with your hand, but most of the time, to make it connect all the way, you're going to have to put some pressure with the bike on the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the master link so it's up here. So I'm going to release the little lever that holds the derailleur cage out of the SRAM derailleur, and I'm going to spin the pedals so that I put the master link up here. I'm going to put the bike on the ground, stand on the pedals, that'll pop the master link into place. Watch the chain as you do this, because that master link is not all the way in, and a lot of times the chain will come off the chain ring. So just make sure you hold it on there. There, it came off. So if it comes off, just put the chain back on your chain ring. There we go. So now I've got the master link right here. Okay, so you heard that little pop. That means the master link is now set. Before you head out on a ride with the new chain installed, you want to make sure you have not stretched out your drivetrain. So what you want to do is put the bike in the gear that you use most often. It may be 2 or 3 gears. Go right around the neighborhood and put some hard pressure on the pedals. If you feel the chain skip on the rear cassette, then you've stretched it out too much. And you have 2 options. One is you can go buy a new cassette, or you can put the old chain back on until you're able to go get a new cassette. And the final step that you need to do is get that coating off the new chain before you go ride, especially if you ride mountain bikes, because you're going to attract a lot of sand and dirt on the chain. So take a rag or paper towel, put some rubbing alcohol on it, and just put it around the chain, spin the pedals backwards, and you'll feel the chain kind of be sticky at first as you start to do this, and then it'll smooth out a little bit. Now what I do is I don't put lube on a new chain until I've ridden maybe 3 or 4 or 5 rides. That way I make sure I get all of that coating off before I put my chain lube on. And one final tip is you probably want to clean your bike before you do this. That way you're putting a new chain on a clean drivetrain. So that's how you replace a chain on your bicycle. It's not really done at certain time intervals. It's done based on how stretched out your chain gets. For some people, it may be every 3 months. For some people, it may be every 1.5 years. Invest in the chain checker because it'll pay big dividends by saving your drivetrain. Any questions or comments that you have, go ahead and drop them below. Thanks for watching.